Today I want to talk with you about Gartner's 3 architectural models for SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. The term SASE was coined by Gartner in 2019. And when it was coined, basically it included 3 elements in it. The first one is all the networking part, SD-WAN. SD-WAN is an application-aware and policy-based secure networking, which is centrally managed and network interface agnostic, meaning you can bring multiple types of network, internet connections, broadband, wireless, 5G, LTE, satellite into the system, into your network. And based on the policies that you would define in the central management, the system will use them. So that's one element of it. The second element that originally in 2019 didn't carry the name SSE, Security Service Edge, but these capabilities were already inside it. Basically, it's a cloud-delivered security definition that includes all the elements that I mentioned here: Zero Trust Network Access, Secure Web Gateway, CASB, and the Firewall as a Service. And all the traffic runs from the edge, either location, the office, the store, or the laptop or mobile phone of a certain user, over a backbone that is provided by that same vendor. From there, it reaches the security in the cloud, going through various POPs of that vendor, and after going through the security, it would exit to the internet, another location or another device of a user. So all of these 3 elements combined together, they create what is defined as a Secure Access Service Edge. This, at the end of the day, is a single vendor SASE. It's a single vendor SASE, and it comes basically as a silo that is locked. It's not that you can decide that you want to use the backbone of this provider or that provider, or maybe you want to use a different cloud security or anything like that. So when it came out in 2019, it came out with a big promise, a big hype, and right away it was at the peak of inflated expectations on the Gartner hype cycle. In reality, what we saw is that service providers and enterprises didn't necessarily go to the recommended architecture. Okay, at the end of the day, the SASE is a recommended architecture. It's not a new invention. So they didn't go with that specific recommendation, but took pieces and parts of it. Because think of an enterprise. They might have a long-term contract for SD-WAN. They might have a long-term contract for security and other things. It's not that they're replacing everything. And many times they want to be able to have choice. So market voted for change. And this vote for change came because of many, many reasons. So companies and service providers for sure wanted more control over the network architecture, over the routing policy. Not that everything is fixed, that it's from the edge, through the backbone, to the security, and so forth, but have more control over that, more choice in selecting vendors, in selecting features, and based on that maybe changing vendors, and control the cost structure of the hardware and the software itself. So what happened later on is that Gartner came out in April 2022 with a document that defined 3 architectural models. So before that, they came out with the definition of SSE, and then they came also with these 3 models. So the first one is the original model, which is a single vendor. This is what I showed, that you have all the 3 elements, SD-WAN, SSE, and backbone, all of 3 of these coming from the same vendor. The second model talks about a dual vendor. In this case, what we see is that SD-WAN comes from vendor A, SSE comes from vendor B, and typically the backbone would come also from the SSE provider, because SSE resides in the cloud, so it makes sense that the backbone would also come from that. So these are the first 2, but the third one is a much more open type of architecture, and it talks about the use case specific. I added to it hybrid and open, because we believe that you would want to be able to have some kind of a combination of using a real full SASE architecture versus other optional architectures, and it's not necessarily that you need to choose this or that. but you can choose that based on policies and applications and traffic types and so forth. So let's dive now a bit deeper into the hybrid SASE and the architecture of it. First of all, what we see right now is the closed SASE architecture that was mentioned before, where all the traffic has to go through the central security, goes over the backbone to the security in the cloud. And there's no option for direct internet access. In a hybrid SASE, the idea is that we push the routing decisions to the edge. Everything is defined in the central management in the cloud, so it doesn't matter if you have 2 locations or 1,000 locations, it's the same work to configure it. Everything is pushed to the edge devices, and there it can be possible, based on the configuration that we'll set in the central management, to decide that specific applications or specific users or whatever you want would be able to access directly the internet. So for example, if somebody is on a Zoom call or is watching YouTube or whatever, the IT or the service provider would be able to decide if they want these type of applications to go directly to the internet instead of consuming bandwidth and cloud processing power that costs a lot of money for applications that are actually typically delay sensitive and have a lot of bandwidth and require a lot of processing. So they can decide if they want, based on their policy, to have direct internet access, and they can change it any minute in the central management, and which applications would actually need to go through the central security, the cloud security, the SSE, over the backbone. Or maybe they would decide that some applications or maybe some locations would not go through the backbone. The advantages here are very significant from cost perspective and from a performance perspective, delay, for example, because it depends on the organization. If you have an organization that has various locations where the presence of POPs of the SASE vendor are not so great, you don't want all the traffic to go to a very far away location, which is the first POP, and from there to the internet and so to the cloud security, and also the same thing when it comes back. So you can make these decisions in your configuration and change it based on the locations that you have. So to summarize, the hybrid SASE, the idea of it is that you can make the decisions in the configuration, which type of traffic would go directly to the internet. For that, we have, as FlexiWAN, we have firewall natively part of the system at the edge, and you configure it, of course, from the cloud, and that protects the location. We have IPsec peer connections, so you as an enterprise or a service provider can decide which SSE vendors you want to work with and connect with them through this peer connection, and you can decide if you want the traffic to go over the backbone that you selected, or maybe to use the internet. So suddenly you have much more choice. You can, of course, always decide that you want everything to go through an SSE, but you don't have to. The idea is that you have much more choice, you can control cost, and you can optimize the quality, delay, packet loss, and so forth. In conclusion, SASE is a never one-size-fits-all. And we saw the different architectures that even Gartner has, and in the third one, we saw that there can be many, many options. Enterprises and service providers have different requirements, and they want a way to actually support these requirements that they have. And there is a need also to leave space for new technologies and options of vendors instead of being locked to a silo of a single vendor SASE. And there's no one architecture to rule them all. I think that's the idea. Flexibility is what the enterprise and the service provider wants. Thank you very much.